Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Awaken Authentic Self. If you're watching me for the first time, I'm your host, Jill Young. If you are an existing subscriber, thank you for coming back to the family, supporting your girl. Go ahead, hit the like and the subscribe to support. I just wanted to come back on here as promised because in my previous video, we talked about the characteristics of a godly man, or the characteristics of Boaz. So if you are single and you are in the dating field and you are looking for that special one, you're going to want to stay tuned. Especially this one here, we're going to be talking about the characteristics of Ruth, or the characteristics of a godly woman. So men, you're going to want to stay tuned on this video here to get those characteristics. Ladies, you can benefit from this as well. You can make sure you are showing these characteristics in the dating field so that you can attract your Boaz. All right, so everybody's going to benefit today. I just didn't come up with these at the top of my head. I got these from the book of Ruth. These were about 6 characteristics that you can find in the book of Ruth of a godly woman, right? So you're going to want to stay tuned. This is not the end all be all. Of course, there's going to be specific custom characteristics for each particular person, right? Because we are all individuals, and I understand that. But these are very the bones, the meat that you may want, the qualities that you may want to have in any woman, right, fellas, that you are going to consider to court, to date, to be committed to. So I hope that you are familiar with the book of Ruth. If not, I recommend that you read the book of Ruth. It's a very short book in the Bible, because I'm not going to read it word from word. Today, I will reference some scriptures. Please feel free to go ahead now, pause this video, get your Bible, turn to the book of Ruth, because we're going to be going through some things here. Now, number one, the number one characteristics of a godly woman, or your Ruth, is she is committed to service to her family. If you are familiar with this story in the Bible, Ruth was a woman from She was from Moab, right? A Moabitess. And she loses her husband in an era where there is famine going on. Her mother-in-law loses her husband as well. And her mother-in-law has another daughter-in-law who lost her husband, right? So 3 women lost their spouse. And this was during a time when women were not the providers of the home. So they're looking for food. Now, Naomi, the mother-in-law, she has a daughter-in-law who decides to go back to her family and where she's from. But Naomi could not convince Ruth to leave her and go back to her family. Ruth says, no, I'm going to stay here with you. I'm going to serve the God that you serve. So Ruth did not leave her mother-in-law's side during, this time, this transitional period in her life. She did not, go and think about herself. She thought about Naomi, the history that they had, the family, and decided to stay by her side and work through this together with her. So they decide to go to a certain particular man's field who owns grain, right? And his name was Boaz. Boaz, I guess he was a wealthy man. He had a whole field of grain. He had reapers that worked in his field to gather grain. And during these times, people who were without, people who were widows, people who were poor, were allowed to go in these fields and gather grain that has dropped from the reapers and take them for themselves. They were allowed to do that. So they chose to go to Boaz's field because they also had a custom that if the spouse, if a woman's spouse dies, passes away, a family member next in line, can marry her. And so Ruth wants to present herself to Boaz to see if he would take notice of her. And not only that, she needs to get grain because, her and Naomi need to eat. So the number one characteristics that I gathered from the book of Ruth, and you might be able to read the book of Ruth and find even more. But the number one that God revealed to me is Ruth is committed to service to her family. Now, a lot of times, fellas, you might say, oh, well, she seems to be an overachiever. She does a lot of work. She's masculine. But the essence of this characteristic trait from the book of Ruth that I'm referring to right here and now is she's working because she's committed. She's working, deciding to go into the field to gather grain because she's faithful to her family. She's committed. She decides not to leave Naomi's side. Now, Naomi is an older woman. She didn't say, Naomi, come and go in the field and help gather grain with me. No, she's still a young lady. She has the strength and the ability to gather the grain and help her mother-in-law. So this is what she decides to do. And not only does she do that, she asked her mother-in-law for advice. So if you go to the book of Ruth, chapter 2, verse 2, it says, so Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she asked Naomi because she's a foreigner and she doesn't know what the custom is. So she's pretty much asking for permission. Do you mind if I go to this field and gather grain? So she gets the permission. And so just that right there shows you the dedication, the loyalty, the ability to stay solid even in bad times. So if you don't want to get caught up in somebody who is what we say is a gold digger, right? You want to look at her character, and it's going to take a little bit more digging. It's not just looking at her and saying, ooh, this one has a nice cocoa cola bottle shape, right? Or, she has pretty hair, pretty skin tone, and all those things and qualities may be nice, but more importantly, you're going to want to look at her heart. So her heart is in the right place. She's not working to be masculine. She's not working to be independent. She's working because she's committed. She's faithful. And it's just the ladies who are left. Their husbands just died. They're in a time of famine. And so her heart's in the right place. So that's number one. She is committed to the service of her family. Maybe she doesn't have a family yet. She could be committed to something, right? The point is she knows how to commit. Number two, your godly woman or your Ruth, she will present herself before you in a humble, modest way. So that means if she is twerking it out in front of you, if, she's showing a lot of skin to get your attention, if, she is very loud, when, to get a person's attention, and obnoxious, that might not be the lady that is ready for marriage, or ready to be courted, or ready for you to date. All right, let's just keep it real. Now, she might be a good twerker. She might be good looking, but it's important to remember that beauty is fading. So you can marry someone and be with someone because they are beautiful and they look exactly like the type of lady or woman that you would like. But at some point in time, if you stay with this person long enough, they're going to age. And the last thing you're going to want is somebody who is aged, but yet has a bad heart or bad character flaws. The two is not going to mix. You're not going to be able to deal with that. So you're going to have to find something beautiful about the person that's going to last through time, that's going to be timeless. You ever heard of that saying, timeless beauty? So you're going to need a lady whose heart you actually love, whose soul you actually love, not just the outer appearance. So when you first meet this lady, you could perhaps be attracted to the fact that she's humble and modest, if you are looking for a wife. Men who are looking for a wife are looking for women with these characteristics, right? When you're ready to settle down, you will be looking for a woman with these characteristics. And ladies, remember this. So if you want to attract your Boaz, make sure you are appearing to the world in a way that doesn't come off as, needy, doesn't come off as flamboyant, doesn't come off as like just showing a lot of skin, being a pick-me girl, pick me, and just doing a whole lot of things for attention. No, let him see the real you. Just be your humble self and be modest. Present yourself before him. If he takes notice of you, great. But if he does not, then he can't be your Boaz, right? He might be someone else's Boaz. But if you honestly and authentically and genuinely, this is not supposed to be for the ladies, but now I'm jumping into the ladies because I'm a lady. But if you've done that and you present yourself before him and he still does not see you, then he's not your Boaz, or at least he's not ready at this time, okay? So, but fellas, she's gonna present herself in a humble and modest way. And in this story, in the book of Ruth, we see that's exactly what Ruth does, okay? She wasn't forward about it. She came into the field, gathered the grain, just like people did in those times, and went on her way, right? So, number 3. This lady will allow her reputation to speak for her, right? She doesn't have to go to the guy and say, well, I am classy, and I am this, and I am that. She doesn't have to show qualities of a pick-me, right? She has a quiet, humble spirit. She prays, to God that, the right man will notice her. So she allows her reputation to go before her. She allows somebody, a godly person that's going to come and maybe validate who she is without her saying anything. So if you go to Ruth chapter 2, verse 7, this is when Boaz, he comes to the field and he notices Ruth. He notices that there is somebody there that is normally not there. She's a foreigner. She looks different than everybody else. So he goes to his head reaper, right? He goes to his head guy that works in his field. And he says, who was this? Who was this woman? And so the head reaper tells Boaz, he says, if you go to chapter 2, verse 7, and she said, he's explaining what Ruth said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and has continued from morning until now, though she rested a little while in the house. So he's explaining, she came to me and asked, can I come and gather, the sheaves after the reapers? And so he's basically explaining who she is. And so Boaz is, he's familiar with Ruth, and he knows who she is. He knows that she is the daughter-in-law of Naomi, and Naomi is related to one of his family members. And so he is aware of that. He knows she has a good reputation. And so number 3 is she allows her reputation to move before her, right? Because her reputation is going to provide the provision for her in attracting Boaz. Now, there will be times where you will have hateful, jealous people or the enemy that will try to steer you wrong about a lady, about a person. This is when you need to use discernment and dig a little deeper. Maybe you can do a little bit more research and find out and inquire about who this person really is, and look at the fruit that they produce, right? For example, if you are familiar with the story in the Bible of how Jesus curses the fig tree, right? And basically what you have is Jesus comes upon a tree that is a fig tree. It's supposed to have fig on it, but it doesn't have any fig. And so he curses the fig tree and tells it to shrivel up and die. Now, that may seem like, Jesus was angry that he couldn't get any fig off the tree, but he sees that tree as a curse because it is presenting itself as if it has something it can provide, some fruit that it's supposed to provide, that it was created to provide, but it ain't providing it. It didn't have the fruit that it was showing it should have, right? So it's kind of how you would recognize a counterfeit. They come in and act like, they can give certain things that you could benefit from them in a certain way, but they don't produce that fruit. So one of the ways that you can determine a reputation, like the Bible lets us know, is you shall know them by their fruit. So keep that in mind. So number 4, you're a godly woman. You're Ruth. She will be respectful of you, right? She will respect your authority and even affirm why she respects you. Okay, so if you look in, again, the book of Ruth, go to chapter 2. We're staying in chapter 2. This time we're going into verse 13. And verse 13 says, now, this is Ruth. Now, she is answering Boaz because Boaz is going to her and asking her why she's here, or saying to her that he finds favor in her. And she responds to him respectfully and says, then she said, let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. So she acknowledges the fact that Boaz has allowed her to come glean in his field and gather grain, and has been kind to her, allowed her to stay there. And so she is thanking him for that. And that is, showing respect. It's showing gratitude. So you want to look for that as a trait. And you know what? Your person, she could be funny. She can have an awesome personality. She can be outgoing. But these are the foundational qualities that somebody must have, right? In order to be your Proverbs 31 woman, in order to be your Ruth, in order to be a godly woman that you're going to want to look for, right? It's kind of like the prerequisite, right? Up front, before we can move on to the next. And so number 4 is she respects you. She is respectful, and she affirms why she respects you. Number 5, fellas and ladies, if you want to make sure you are showing these qualities, she will store up food for her family, and she maintains her household. So this woman, you're going to want to look at, is she able to save? Is she able to save her money? Is she able to take care of herself? Not be overly concerned with her, upkeep to the point where she doesn't have things that she needs in her home. Like, she's not spending all of her money on clothes. She's not spending all of her money on hair. She's not spending all of this excess and, having her priorities out of order. No, she has her priorities in order. She stores up food for her household. So she's thinking not just of herself, but of others. Now, the Bible doesn't say Ruth had any children, I don't believe, left behind. She had a mother-in-law. So it shows, that she cared about somebody other than herself. And if you don't want to get stuck with a selfish lady, a contentious woman, somebody who is self-centered, these are some qualities that you can look for. Is this woman able to save up for herself, or is she just so, worried about her appearance that she can't afford, basic things for her home? So this is what you need, all right? So she stores up food for herself. How do we know that? In the book of Ruth, Ruth goes to the field to gather grain, and she takes some of that grain to eat for herself, and she saves the leftover grain to give to her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law is elderly. Her mother-in-law needs help, so she helps. And so that leads us to number 6, which is the last one that I have for us today, is your godly woman, or your Ruth, she will extend her hand to the poor. So once again, Ruth extends her hand to her mother-in-law, giving her food. So she has a caring heart. She is nurturing. This is who this person is at their core, at their being. And if you also want to reference Proverbs chapter 31, verse 20, it says, it's describing a Proverbs 31 woman. And one of the passages says, she opens her arms to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. Again, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands out to the needy. Isn't that what Ruth is doing here? When she decides to stay with her mother-in-law, although she lost her husband, and although the mother-in-law lost her husband, Naomi couldn't provide anything for Ruth. She couldn't do anything for Ruth as far as materially, right? She was good to get advice from. She was a good person that, of course, loved Ruth, but she did not have the material things, the food, the shelter, the clothing that one would need. She wasn't rich. And in spite of that, Ruth still stood by her side. She was loyal to her, and she made sure this woman had food. And so that shows the type of heart that Ruth had. That shows the type of character that she has. So while the appearance, fellas, may be important to you at first, make sure behind that appearance that this person has the good intentions, the good heart, the character that you're going to need in your future wife or your Ruth. All right? And ladies, make sure your heart's in the right place. And I believe it is, because if you're watching this channel, your heart's in the right place because you want to know. You're watching because you are, inquiring and wanting to know what these characteristics are of a godly woman. And so that brings us to the end of this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Do not forget to hit the like and the subscribe, reciprocate, pay back now. I don't get any money to come out here and, do these videos. I do this unto the Lord. And so if you would just hit that like or go ahead and share, it would really help support this channel. So I thank you for watching, and I will see you again another day.